The next few days were spent resting and recovering, with Gustav visiting with me. At different points, though, it felt like someone else was there, and my mind too. I also had a few memories, or dreams, that didn't involve me. I wasn't sure who this Kaylee was, or why her memories were in my mind. It made things very difficult for me, though, causing a bit of a headache. It felt like there was a bit of a struggle, an internal battle going on, and I wasn't sure why. When it first happened, I had not told Gustav about it. He had noticed that I seemed to have a headache, which he asked about, but I said that I was all right. A bit later that day, though, the headache intensified slightly, and I felt like I had to tell him about it. When I had told him, he seemed unsure of what to do. After a little while, though, he asked me if I wanted to go and sit in the garden and have some tea. I'd thought it over and thought that it might help me feel better to get some fresh air, as well as being one of my favorite places on the mansion grounds. I had told Gustav that I did want to have tea in the garden, and he left my room for a while. Not too long after that, Cerise as well as 2 other female servants came into my room to help me dress. Once I was dressed, in one of my favorite dresses, one that was a forest green color, Gustav was told he could come back in. He went and gently picked me up and carried me out of the mansion and out to the garden. For that day and the next couple, we had tea in the garden and Gustav sat with me. Yes, it was daylight at the time, but I knew it wouldn't hurt Gustav. He told me at one point that the sun doesn't hurt vampires. We talked for a while, until I got a bit tired, and then he had to carry me back inside so I could rest. Now, the 4th day as I sat in the garden, I felt as if I would be able to eat something. So at one point while I had been drinking my tea, and between talking with Gustav, I had requested a few cucumber sandwiches. Gustav and I continued to talk, until not only the cucumber sandwiches were brought, but we were interrupted. A male servant apologized for the interruption and mentioned needing to speak to Gustav. The way he talked, it sounded like there was something wrong. I had looked over at Gustav, not really sure if finding out what was wrong was such a good thing, but also knowing it was probably a better idea to find out. After Gustav assured me that he would be back soon, that he wouldn't be too far away from me, and I wouldn't be left by myself in the time he was away, he stood up and went and talked with the male servant. As I waited for Gustav to come back, I went and slowly started eating the cucumber sandwiches. By the time he'd come back, I'd finished eating all the sandwiches I'd been brought, and had finished my current cup of tea, and had drunk a half of another cup. When he came back to where we'd been sitting in the garden, I was about to ask what the conversation was about, to ask what was so important. Before I could, however, Gustav said,
"My family will be arriving in 4 days. They were a bit surprised when they heard from me, and when I told them about you being here. They will want to ask you some questions when they arrive."
He paused, then said, looking at me as if he was watching my face for a reaction.
"Emma and Lawrence will arrive here in 2 days. When I sent for my parents, brother, and Emma, I had hoped that they would be able to arrive at the same time."
Before he could continue talking, I said, almost dropping my teacup but managing to put it down before I did, "Both Emma and Lawrence will be here?" I was in shock. I hadn't expected to hear that at all. It had been bad enough for Gustav to mention sending for Emma, but I hadn't expected Lawrence to come along with her. I was really afraid that something bad would happen when they were here, and I hoped I was wrong.
"Yes, they will,"
Gustav said, sounding just as upset as he had been a few nights ago, when I told him about what Emma and Lawrence did to me.
"I understand why you do not want to be around them. You have caused a great amount of heartache, as have I. However, they are married now. Even if they were not married, Emma would still insist on having him here with her."
I looked down and said, after being silent for a little while. Yes, we have been caused a great deal of pain and heartache. If Emma had not interfered as well as gotten Lawrence involved in the situation, we would have been married and spending our new life together.
There is nothing to say that we cannot still marry,
Gustav said.
I have never stopped loving you or wanting you to be my bride.
I smiled a little, looking up at him, before I said, I'm very glad, Gustav. I was hoping that you would... I trailed off after I said that, feeling a bit of a headache from before come back. My hand went to my forehead. I was sure that Gustav noticed, and that I had a bit of a pained expression on my face, because I heard him say,
Are you all right? Has your headache come back?
I was silent for a little while before I said, I'm not sure. My headache has come back, and it's not as painful as before. However, I'm not sure why it came back when you mentioned marrying me. The memories I had before that were not my own are there, but not as much. I paused and said, I am not sure why this is happening. Why am I remembering things I never did? More importantly, who is Kaylee? I noticed the look on Gustav's face. He seemed like he wanted to tell me something, but also seemed unsure about whether or not he should. He was silent for a while before he said,
I am not sure if right now is the best time to tell you, my love. You already have enough to deal with. Once you are rested and your headache has subsided a bit, then I will tell you.
I wasn't sure how to react to what Gustav said. I was silent for a little while, as I thought of, or rather attempted to think of, what to say. Eventually I said, Why do you say you'll answer my questions later? Do you know why I have someone else's memories? Gustav nodded his head and said,
Yes, I do.
I stood and said, instinctively putting more weight on my good ankle, and not the one that was still healing. How do you know? Why will you not just tell me what you know now? You have never kept things from me. I noticed that Gustav was close to me, very close, by then. I hadn't even noticed him moving towards me as I was talking. He looked a bit hurt by what I said. He put his arms around me, then said,
Lena, I wish I could tell you now. You are right. We have never kept things from each other. I am just not sure how to tell you what you want to know.
I was silent for a little while as I lay my head against his chest, just enjoying being there with him. As I did, I felt my headache go away somewhat. When I did, I smiled up at him and said, My headache seems to have gone away somewhat. When Gustav heard that, he went and lifted my chin and kissed me, which I returned. The kiss started off soft, but then grew in intensity and passion. I hadn't remembered Gustav ever kissing me like this, except maybe when I said that I would marry him. Even then, there seemed to be a bit more passion and intensity in this kiss now than it had been then. I wasn't sure why he was kissing me like that, but I liked it. It also helped me forget my headache, making it go away almost completely. It also made me forget what we've been talking about before. After kissing for a little while, Gustav stopping because he remembered I was human and needed air, he asked me, with a bit of a sly grin,
How does your head feel?
I smiled and said, My head feels just fine. My ankle decided to twinge a little, and when I winced, Gustav said,
I think it is time for you to go back inside.
As he picked me up, I said, Why does my ankle hurt?
It is one of many things I need to tell you.
He said, as he carried me inside.
It will have to be at another time.
With that, he went and carried me through the house, to my room, and laid me down on the bed. Once I was laying on the bed, he said,
I will leave you to rest. I will not be too far away, though.
With that, he went and left the room, and I lay there for a little while. Eventually, I felt my eyes closing, and myself